Hey guys. All right. Chapter 1. Finding the right place for you. I love my property. I got a great deal on a fully remodeled house deep in the country in northern Minnesota. The house was fully finished and came with heat, water, and septic already in place. The 10 acres of land has a stand of oaks and pine along with several mature fruit trees. Now that would be cool. There was already a small barn and modest garden with ample space for me to expand. However, this sort of a setup doesn't usually happen overnight. Moving forward, we will assume that you want to build completely from raw land. While this might not be the case, it will nonetheless help you identify certain things that help clarify your vision for the ideal property. I live in northern Minnesota, so please understand that my advice and perspective comes from my experiences with 4 distinct seasons. While this will offer a well-rounded approach, you should be mindful of your own regional climate. Well, we're pretty close to there, so. Where to look? The first question you have to ask yourself is how far out do you really want to be? Sure, there is a romantic notion of a guy living off the land deep in the wilderness. You could sit around all day in your fortress of solitude watching the vegetables ripen as you read the collective works of the world's greatest poets and philosophers. That is all fine and good until you have to backpack out and drive 3 hours to get to a dentist. God help you if you snap a fan belt on a truck a half hour before sundown. The reality is you cannot ever possibly be prepared for everything, and there's always going to be specific requirements like adequate medical care that factor in. In my opinion, you want to be within a 30 to 60 minute drive of a town with a quality hospital, a hardware store with reasonably priced lumber, a basic auto parts store, and a vibrant farmer's market or basic grocery store. These are the 4 stores that are your most likely destinations for what my wife and I call a town run. If you can keep yourself within reasonable range of healthcare, tools, parts, lumber, and food items you can't grow yourself, then you can pretty much improvise the rest. With all the fancy mapping software available on the internet these days, you should be able to narrow down your search. If you are planning to have children or already have school-aged children, you might want to factor in the quality of nearby schools or do a thorough investigation of your state's homeschooling requirements. I would go homeschooling. Planning your budget. Now, I can't simply assume you've got a goose that lays golden eggs and a captive leprechaun stashed in your back closet. Realistically, your budget is a big deal. Banks honestly aren't looking to offer easy financing to someone who wants to use the property to live off the land. Of course, every real estate market is different, so I can't just tell you what a certain feature is worth in your area. What I can do is point out certain things that can either help or hinder your efforts. In some cases, it's simply a matter of dedicating a little more money from the budget to allow for some creative problem solving. Existing house on a developed property versus raw land. This can be a lot to wrap your head around. The advantage of buying a piece of property that has been developed with a house already standing on it is that you will achieve a smaller dependency footprint sooner than if you clear the land and build a house. It unfortunately means you are going to have to accept someone else's choices in how the land was developed and what kind of amenities the house and barn have. The advantage of buying a piece of raw land is that so long as you have the finances to do it, you can develop your property to match your vision. As a general rule of thumb, you should assume that it will take you 5 years of busting your butt, black and blue, to develop a piece of raw land before you see your vision begin to bear fruit. We don't have that kind of time. So, I'm thankful for my mom and dad's property. We have, we have the house for now. And I'm just going to work really hard to get our house up and get our gardens and barns and coops and stuff to where there's sound and we can house animals again and be on the road to being self-sufficient, and as well as getting our faith-first businesses going. So let's take a look at the land. I have a 10-acre property. Of course, of those 10 acres, 5 are heavily wooded. 2 acres are lightly wooded with bur oak and fruit trees. The rest is garden, open orchard, driveway, and barn. In my case, the heavy woods is actually on the border of a much larger public forest, which expands out from a state preserve, giving me extended hunting range. It also gives me access to a large amount of native wildlife and educational nature hikes with my daughter. For me, hunting plays an important role in my homesteading lifestyle. I understand that this is a controversial topic for some people. If you are not someone who intends to hunt, a property with available hunting land might not fit your vision. If I was not interested in hunting and forested nature walks with my daughter, I would suggest seeking more open land for a fruit orchard. Once established, orchards require only a modest amount of maintenance for a large yield. I have a friend who purchased 30 acres of raw land at a great price per acre. The savings allowed him to build his dream home. The only hitch in the plan was how long it took him to get set up. He was wise enough to realize that it would take him an entire summer to clear the land for the house and barn, so he factored in an extra $5,000 for a beat-up old trailer house to be parked on the property. The weather was kind to him that summer, and he even managed to get the foundation for the house dug. He managed to pour the floor, block the walls, and get a heavy covering of plywood over the foundation before the snow fell. All in all, it was a productive first year for a guy who was working largely on his own while still holding down a day job. While I doubt he will ever admit it openly, I think the first winter in the trailer was hard on him. We didn't get a lot of snow that year. Without the insulation of snow on the ground, the soil froze deep. There was a real threat that the deep freeze could damage the young foundation. So he burned 5 days of vacation time to install a rudimentary wood stove in the foundation, which he kept fed so it would be protected from the cracking that can arise from deep freeze. The next year, his prefabricated home arrived in sections shortly after the road weight restrictions were lifted. Since he is a ridiculously handy person, he decided to save money and finish the interior himself. This saved him something around $15,000. It still turned out to be a lot more work than he expected. He ultimately spent an extra $3,000 by hiring laborers to help him finish the master bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen. He was able to spend the second winter in relative comfort, working inside the house at his own pace to finish the interior. His third year was all about the barn. His original plan was for a barn made of cordwood. The idea behind cordwood construction is that you use the split logs from fallen trees like bricks. The wood needs to come from rot-resistant trees. In his case, it was a stand of old cedar he had cleared. The wood needs to be seasoned or dried for at least 2 years in order to keep it from shrinking in the cement mortar. This had been his genius plan from day one. That's why he logged the cedars to the same 20-inch uniform width in every single log. He even tried to split them into perfect quarters so they would fit together with more visual appeal in the final wall. The only thing he didn't account for was just how much wood he would need to burn through those first 2 winters. He ultimately had to steal from the cordwood barn pile in order to keep the house and foundation warm all that time. His first ingenious solution was to use fieldstone for the walls. I mean, in theory, every farm field has a pile of old stones mounded in a corner of the field. They are generally of no use to the farmer. In theory, you should be able to just grab as much as you want for free. The unfortunate reality is that in the springtime, any farmer worth his salt is busy and running around at breakneck pace getting fertilizing, plowing, and planting from sunup until sundown. They're pretty hard to get a hold of. This is right up until you start poking around their fields looking for rock piles that you can help yourself to. Then they start to show up with shotguns and angry looks. After 2 weeks of random conversations with the local farmers, he secured himself for a few rock piles that could do the job. At that time, he and I both drove the similar Ford F-150 pickup trucks. On paper, the maximum payload capacity in the rear leaf springs was 3,800 pounds. While that might sound like a lot on paper, you also have to remember that rocks are really heavy. Loading the box up to 3,800 pounds flattens the rear leaf springs so they are parallel to the curvature of the earth. Every speed bump causes heart palpitations, and your butt cheeks bite the seat if you're foolish enough to drive into a small pothole. After that first load nearly put him in the cardiac ward, his loads started getting smaller and smaller. He was probably only averaging 2,000 pounds per load just to let him sleep at night. At the end of the endeavor, it took him 27 trips with his pickup truck to amass a large enough amount of fieldstone that he could build the barn of his dreams. At that point, he was also 5 weeks behind his original timeline. His body was physically beat to hell, and he needed a solid week of sitting on the couch and sleeping in just to get his body back into fighting shape. During that 6-week span, one of his neighbors had poured the footings and completely assembled the shell of a barn made from sheet, tin, and refurbished lumber. In order to get back on track, he had to dip into his now shallow slush fund to hire some general laborers. It ultimately set him back another $3,000 in paychecks and meals for 4 guys for 4 weeks in order to get the stone walls assembled and cured well enough that he could start work on the roof. While he'd never admit it, I suspect at this point he had some doubts about his vision starting to settle in. At that point, he was too far in to pull out, and his dream of a stone-walled dairy barn was within sight. Now, my friend's version of the homesteading lifestyle slants more towards something akin to the old-fashioned dairy farm. He prefers to be the direct master of his meats and dairy products. This is a product of his concern about hormones and antibiotics. He prefers to trade his surplus meat and milk for the vegetables he wants. He is also more willing to risk that his vegetables are treated with pesticides than his meat with hormones. I base more of my vision toward fruits and vegetables, preferring to source meat from local ranches, county butchers, and hunting. I am also an accomplished cook, making almost all of my family's meals from scratch. Being able to grow my own fruits and vegetables allows me to grow unique items that you can't really find at a grocery store or farmer's market. See, it's another reason why I want to grow all of our stuff. At the end of the day, it is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The point to pay attention to here is that he had a vision, he had a plan, and he was prepared to bust his butt for over 2 years. He still ended up behind and over budget. I'm not saying that he chose poorly or was unprepared in the least. Merely that his lifestyle is one based on resourcefulness and the ability to adapt to all of the random changes that appear along the way. If you base your budget on the notion that you can plan everything perfectly and not have any surprises, and you max out your credit, then chances are good that you will end up in the hole deeper than your checkbook can dig you out of. And that was chapter 1, finding the right place for you. The next chapter is called What to Look For. So, I will go ahead and get this up there, and I will see you guys on the next video. Maybe out of this book, maybe out of another one. I don't know. We'll see. I will see you guys in the next video. Remember, check your subscriptions, you guys. Make sure you're still subscribed. Click that notification bell. Click on all to make sure you get the notifications. Like and share the videos. Share them on all your platforms, friends, family, everybody. Just share them, share them, share them, share them. And do your research. Please do your research. Remember to drop those comments. New subscriber package. And your email on design, and then number 1, 2, 3, or 4 on which t-shirt design you want. So remember, the new subscriber packages are a hand-painted Faith First Farm and Homestead t-shirt and a hand-painted Faith First Farm and Homestead mug. So new subscriber package, just leave your comment. This is a new subscriber package. Leave your email, and then 1, 2, 3, or 4 to let me know which design. So I will see you guys in the next video, and do your research, you guys. Bye.